Play that music. Hare Krishna, and welcome back to the Bliss Podcast, episode 15. I'm your host, Maitreya Rishidasa, and I'm here with His Grace, Purijit Prabhu, the founder of the Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. Please say hello, Prabhu.
I will not say hello, I will say Hare Krishna.
Outrageous. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in to the 15th episode. If you weren't here for the previous, we discussed love and compassion. Please have some love and compassion by going and viewing the last podcast and all the previous podcasts, which you can find on the Expand the Bliss channel. And keep in contact with us through our various social medias, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube also, of course. The website is a personal favorite of mine, expandthebliss.com. So many nice articles by all the devotees here in Bliss are there. You can see updates, articles by Srila Prabhupada. You can download some free ebooks there. You can find out what actually is Bliss there. So many nice things. And on our YouTube channels, Expand the Bliss and Kick on the Face. On Kick on the Face, we have some nice philosophical, more in-depth philosophical style videos. So for those of you who are feeling a little deep or have some extra time, you can check out those. And on the Expand the Bliss channel, Purijit Prabhu, he gives very nice Srimad Bhagavatam classes in the morning, and some highlight classes are recorded and posted once a week there, so you can check out some of the highlight classes there on Expand the Bliss. Of course, all of the podcasts are on there, like I previously mentioned, and we also have some one-off highlight videos that are to do with the activities, some things that happen here in Gibraltar during our preaching efforts. So there are all kinds of nice things on there. On Facebook, you can get in contact with us. You can see all the memes. Also on Instagram, you can see the memes that we're posting. And you can just keep in touch with all the updates that are going on to do with the Bliss preaching there. Anything you'd like to add about social media, Prabhu?
Not really.
Nothing you'd like to post? Well, I forgot to mention, sorry, that Prabhu Prabhu is actually sick. He has an infection in the knee. So he's kind of unable to traverse. We traverse to the airport here in Gibraltar. We actually live in La Linea, Spain, and so we go to Gibraltar to get our dosage of the internet. And it's kind of nice because we're cut off from the distraction of the internet in one way, but in another way we kind of have to endeavor to go there. So anyway, it's kind of a walk, a little bit of a hike, and so Prabhu with his knee right now is not really able. So if you are in communication with Purijit Prabhu, or you're expecting some message or some update or some email, just to let you know that Prabhu is having some difficulty accessing the internet. So that is there. Oh yes, of course. And if you'd like to support the Bliss efforts, you can go on our Patreon and our GoFundMe accounts. The Patreon is very exciting. We have 3 different levels of subscription. It suits you depending on how much you can give per month, and there's increments of rewards also. You get access to various levels of the ebooks that are compiled by His Grace Purijit Prabhu. Very nice books like Teachings of Lord Buddha are there, How to Cook for Krishna, How to Offer Food to Krishna, and also upcoming ebooks that are going to be coming out in the near future. Also, recently released the Bliss meme pack. If you've seen the memes that we're creating on Facebook and Instagram, and you'd like to share these memes with your friends and post them on your social medias and expand the Bliss in this way, then you can get access to over 100 memes through the Bliss meme pack, and that'll be available for download if you become a Patreon subscriber. So I think without any further ado, we're going to get into the podcast, of which this week's topic is going to be drugs. That's right. We're breaking the regulative principles on this episode of the Bliss Podcast. So, I get real spiritual when I get real spiritual when I take drugs, man. It makes me feel real high and I feel close to God. So why can't I take drugs to make me feel spiritual?
Yeah, so this is a very common kind of like a statement people give that drugs are good for spiritual life. We, as Krishna devotees, we not at all are in favor of this. Srila Prabhupada, whenever it came to this discussion of drugs and hallucinogens and psychedelics and blah, 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 Prabhupada's response was always negative, completely negative. There's not even a single statement where Prabhupada hints that it could open your mind or it could benefit you. Or no, Prabhupada is very, very strict, very clear that this is a complete nonsense. Drugs are nonsense. You should not take it. It's bad for health. It's bad for your mind. It doesn't give any knowledge. Nothing. It's complete garbage, and it's forbidden. Right? We follow the four regulatory principles. One of them is no intoxication. So all these things, LSD, ganja, or if you're fond of heroin, they're all forbidden. If you want to practice Krishna consciousness, you have to give these up. What to speak of all these, even cigarettes and coffee and chocolate.
What? You're taking away my chocolates?
Yeah, because chocolate does the caffeine. Caffeine is also addictive. It's a slight, little tiny, subtle intoxication.
Yeah, my mum gets the shakes if she doesn't take chocolate.
Really?
Yeah, people get really addicted to this kind of thing. I like coffee. It's like, people really get their blood pressure goes down if they don't take it, if they've been taking it for a while, and they get used to it.
Yeah, so it is not good, because it creates addiction. Of course, you can say everything is addictive, but especially intoxication is an addiction that is not required.
Right. But doesn't it open the mind? I mean, doesn't it bring someone closer to some kind of spiritual realization in one sense?
No.
Okay, well, what does Srila Prabhupada have to say about this?
Srila Prabhupada, as I said, he would always be negative.
But don't we have some kind of recording here, or some conversation with his Allen Ginsberg, as Prabhupada likes to call them?
Ellen Ginger.
Ginger.
Yeah. I'm just trying to say.
Okay, there's a little issue with the audio. Okay, it's happening.
Do you remember a man named Richard Alpert? Do you remember a man named Richard Alpert? He used to work with Timothy Leary in Harvard many years ago. And then he went to India and found a teacher, and is now a disciple of Hanumanji, or a devotee of Hanuman. And he said that, we were talking about Maya and the present condition of America. Some proof? Well, in a while we can talk. It's nicer food. I had a question I wanted to ask. Are you tired?
No, I can talk with the whole night.
So he said that his teacher in India told him that LSD was a Christ of the Kali Yuga for Westerners.
Christ?
Of the Kali Yuga for Westerners. In that, as the Kali Yuga got more intense, as attachment got thicker and thicker, that also salvation would have to be easier and easier. And That
Can arrange things and she's a Bengali lady. Recently come from London. Rekha.
So, as the Kali Yuga became more intense, and as attachment became deeper and more confusing,
Attachment for?
that salvation would also have to become easier and easier. And
That is very nice statement. That in the Kali Yuga, salvation is very easy. That is the version of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Mhm.
But that process is this kirtan, not LSD.
Mhm. Well, it was the reasoning there was that for those who would only accept salvation in purely material form, in chemical form finally, in completely material form,
Then why is the salvation?
that Krishna had the humor to emerge as a pill.
Yeah, the thing is, when it is material form,
Yes.
then why is it salvation? It is illusion.
Well, the subjective effect is to cut
No.
attachment during the.
Well, if you have got attachment for something material, then where is the cut-off attachment? LSD is material chemical.
Yeah.
So if you have to take shelter of LSD, then you take help from the matter. So that is how you can, how you are free from that.
So, Prabhupada is smashing Allen Ginsberg there very nicely. That LSD is something material, so how can it help us get to a spiritual platform? But he says kirtan is the way. And kirtan is sound vibration. So isn't sound also material? I mean, we know from the Bhagavatam how the material universe is formed. And it comes, all the other grosser elements come from ether, from sound. So isn't sound also one of the material elements, and therefore isn't that also a material attachment?
Sorry, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna come back to the conversation. Allen Ginsberg was a famous poet in the 60s, and he was kind of like the guru of the drug culture. Like he would propagate taking of drugs for people to kind of like break through the stereotype of the societies and open their minds to new things. He also went to India before Srila Prabhupada arrived, and he started chanting Hare Krishna also independently from Srila Prabhupada. So kind of an interesting personality. He assisted the movement in some way or other, propagated Srila Prabhupada's movement amongst the hippies. So he definitely has done some devotional service, but he never became a devotee. So there's, here in this conversation, we can see this little clashing of his philosophy and our philosophy. So he starts the conversation. Ginsberg is asking Prabhupada about a name, about a man called Richard Alpert. Richard Alpert, you know who Richard Alpert is?
I actually have never heard of this Richard Alpert. Maybe you could elaborate on who this is.
You have ever heard of Baba Ramdas, this guy?
Baba Ramdas, yeah. I actually was following Baba Ramdas for a little bit before I came to Krishna consciousness, messing around with different spiritual gurus and this and that.
Yeah, he recently left his body.
Yeah, I know. I heard about that. A heart attack maybe or something like that. Can't remember exactly.
Yeah, so Ginsberg is asking Prabhupada, you know this man? So Prabhupada says, it's very obvious that Prabhupada already knows what this is going to be about, and Prabhupada is just sort of pretending that he doesn't know, because it might turn, the conversation might turn a little bit sour, right? There's this clash, the LSD versus Krishna. So Prabhupada is sort of like playing it down, like it's not very important. But for Ginsberg, it's very important. He's asking this question because
Ginsberg's whole philosophy and movement and everything is based on this LSD. So this is quite obviously an important question for him to ask.
Yeah, he wants to basically get approval from Prabhupada in some way or other.
Yeah.
That LSD is okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, Prabhupada's, you can see his expertise, how he deals with the, Prabhupada doesn't want to tell him that you're nonsense and this, because then Ginsberg will be turned off. So very expertly Prabhupada is just pretending that it's not so very important.
I like how Prabhupada, he says, it is a very nice statement that in Kali Yuga, the salvation is easier. Prabhupada's always with the positive. He's not necessarily smashing him right away. He's always with the positive of the conversation and bringing out points for preaching also.
Yeah, exactly. So then Ginsberg is telling him, he was a professor at Harvard, now he's become a disciple of Hanumanji and blah, blah, blah. And Prabhupada cuts in, he tells to this Mataji who just came from London, have some fruits. He's trying to distract him.
Right.
It almost looked like that. I don't know exactly. Of course, I can't read Prabhupada's mind, but it's very pleasurable to see how Prabhupada is dealing. And then Ginsberg is asking, in a very sensitive way, are you tired?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You heard that?
Yeah.
The intonation of his voice, very caring, are you tired? So Ginsberg was very respectful to Prabhupada. He would bow down, he would touch his feet and things like that. Yeah, he was...
But he never became a devotee, you said?
No. Oh. But he learned some etiquettes in India, and he was very respectful to Prabhupada. Even when you listen to these conversations, he would promise to Prabhupada that he would chant Hare Krishna until he leaves this present body.
Okay, wow.
He gave a promise to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada encouraged them, go on chanting Hare Krishna, and that is the best.
He was also doing lots of chanting in kirtans and events with Prabhupada, right? He was kind of supporting and propagating the movement in some way.
Yeah, there was this San Francisco, this big concert.
Yeah.
How do you call it?
Well, what specifically do you mean?
In 1967, the big one in the Avalon Ballroom. What was it called?
I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, the big one in the beginning they did in San Francisco when all these hippies came. Oh, you don't know this story?
I'm not so sure with the Leela.
Okay, that was Shama Sundar and Guru Das they were describing. Anyway, so he came there, Ginsberg came there, there was chanting, and then here in Columbus, this is from Columbus 1969, they did a big kirtan in the university. Thousands of students came and they were chanting Hare Krishna.
Wow, cool.
So it was huge, Can you imagine now 1,000 of students come for our chanting?
Ecstatic like anything.
Can you imagine? I can't. The times have changed so much. So Ginsberg had some influence over the young people, and somehow he was able to convince them to give reception to Prabhupada. And they were chanting. So okay, then Ginsberg says that this teacher, this Richard Albert, Baba Oram, what is his name?
Baba Ramdas.
Baba Ramdas. He said that, now this is real nonsense, that his teacher, Baba Ramdas' teacher, told him that LSD was like a Christ of the Kali Yuga for Westerners.
Well, if you don't mind me saying in this connection also, I remember a story that Baba Ramdas apparently told that might have supported all his followers from believing this nonsense philosophy. Apparently he went to India and gave some yogi there, some guru/yogi, some cubes of LSD, and the yogi said he is always in this state of consciousness, so he didn't feel the effects of the LSD. So then this was like one of the origins of this idea that LSD is a spiritual, brings you to spiritual consciousness. It's like a famous story amongst the New Age movement.
Well, I heard it differently. I heard that he gave it to his guru and the guru felt nothing.
That's what I said.
Ah, okay. And actually they tell this to Prabhupada also. There's another conversation. Maybe I can find it very fast. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he said the guru felt nothing because he said he was always in this state. There's no difference for him. But I mean, we don't know if Baba Ramdas didn't stay for longer and the guru then freaked out after he left. That much isn't described. But this story is pretty widely propagated. So they asked Prabhupada they tell Prabhupada this very same story about Baba Ramdas. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, I found it.
Okay, cool.
Arikesh says, because he just stood there and said, nothing is happening to me. Everybody has figured that he's already there. Prabhupada, there means where? Harikesh, at the ultimate. Prabhupada, hell. Ultimate hell. Yeah. So, anyway, so the conversation continues with Ginsburg. And he gives a reasoning that of the Kali Yuga for Westerners, in that as the Kali Yuga got more intense, as attachment got thicker and thicker, that also salvation would have to be easier and easier. So just see how the conditioned soul likes to speculate.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to say. Like, I mean, he said the reasoning was why, before, I think it's before he says this very thing you just mentioned, that the reasoning behind why they said this was, but the spiritual salvation can't really be by speculation. How can you get perfect liberation by speculation, right?
Well, that's another thing, but you can see how people want to justify the intoxication by giving it some kind of a
Purpose.
Reasoning that is an imitation of the reasoning for chanting the holy name. And that's what Prabhupada says. Yes, that reasoning is very nice. That statement is very nice. That in Kali Yuga salvation is very easy. That is according to the Vedas. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Iva Kevalam Kalo Nasiva Nasiva Gatiranyata. But that process is this kirtan, not LSD, Srila Prabhupada says. So this is, Prabhupada just lays the cards on the table. No more. Prabhupada nips it in the butt. Then Ginsburg is trying to save the situation for the LSD crowds. He said the reasoning there was that for those who would only accept salvation in purely material form, in chemical form finally, and completely material form. Now Prabhupada cuts him. So where is the salvation where there is? And then Ginsburg cuts in that Krishna had the humor to emerge as a pill. So he's trying to bring Krishna. That Krishna is LSD. And then Prabhupada says very logically, the thing is that when it is material form, then what is salvation? It is illusion. And then Prabhupada says, if you have got attachment or something material, then where is the cutoff of attachment? LSD is a material chemical. So if you take shelter of LSD, then you take, help from the matters. How you're free from matter. You see? So this is the argument given by Srila Prabhupada. That if you want to be free, salvation means getting free from material attachments. Right? But if you switch one attachment for another attachment, then where is the cutting off of the attachment? And this is a very important point in the Krishna conscious philosophy. That many times we think that Krishna consciousness depends, or spiritual realization, our spiritual life depends on so many factors. Some devotees, they're complaining that there have been many scandals in the institution, Hare Krishna institution. So that is why we cannot practice as properly as we could. Or they say, well, there's no, I think what is his name? Bhakta Robin.
Oh, yeah.
He also mentioned this, one of his comments, I remember. He said that because there's no proper banking system, or the banking system is making people very poor, that's why they have to engage in illicit activities. So, yes, of course, there are certain things that impede our spiritual progress, but, we have to come to the core. Spirit can never be influenced by the matter. It comes back to the same teaching as I usually quote the shloka in the podcast. Dehi nosmin yatare komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara prapti dhirastatrana namohyati. Krishna says that as you changing body from childhood to youth to old age, similarly you will change your body at the time of death. Dhira, a person who is sober or self-realized, is not bewildered by such a change. So similarly, if you are a sincere devotee of Krishna, then these things will not bewilder you. These are all tests of Krishna, or allurements of Maya. They're supposed to test your devotion. Krishna is testing. Krishna doesn't want nonsense people in the spiritual world, those who are impure or have material attachments. If you want to go to Krishna, you must be 100% pure love of Krishna. So Krishna sends these allurements to test you. And if you misunderstand it, well, this thing is impeding my spiritual life, and this thing, I need this, I need that, and so on and so on, then you can never come to the state of perfection. So similarly, if we think that, I need drugs, I need this for spiritual life, then we don't really understand what spiritual life is. There's in the the Happiness on the 21st Second Avenue, that movie you have seen?
No.
Hayagriva, one of the Srila Prabhupada disciples, he said he's remembering a pastime with Srila Prabhupada. He says that I asked Swamiji if I can use LSD to improve my spiritual practice. And Swamiji, I'm just paraphrasing, you can watch that movie, it's on YouTube also, you can see it exactly what he says. Hayagriva said that Swamiji said that you don't need LSD to improve your spiritual life. Your spiritual life is already there. And there's a nice shloka in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that says that the Krishna consciousness is in the heart of every living entity. It simply becomes reactivated by the hearing of spiritual sound. Just like Prabhupada, he says also that Shabda, the sound from the Guru and from the Hare Krishna mantra, the sound of the Hare Krishna mantra, is spiritual. Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtan. Nantam Das Thakur says that this Hare Krishna mantra has been imported from the spiritual world. So the real spiritual life is simply the revival of your original consciousness. You don't need anything, so to speak, for your spiritual life. The spiritual master, he, by his instruction, simply reawakens the consciousness that is already there. And then you become free, you become independent. The true independence is the independence of the spirit, not of the body. What the drugs do is they do the other they do it the other way around. You take some drugs, you have some experience, but that experience you cannot maintain. Of course, you have some realization, this and that, but one is taking the drug again and again to revive that experience. It is not you take the drug and then the state of consciousness slowly evaporates, right? You go down. And then you have to take it again in order to increase it. It is not that after you take it, then it is increasing more and more and more. But in the spiritual life, if you hear the spiritual sound from the Guru, then your realizations are increasing more and more and more. You see? And ultimately, in the highest stage of Krishna consciousness, you are taking guidance from the Guru within Krishna, the Super Soul. There is no difference between the Super Soul, the guide in the heart. Krishna expands himself as the guide in the heart to the hearts of all living entities, and the spiritual master. Spiritual master is called the external manifestation of the Super Soul. What the spiritual master says externally from the outside, just like we're hearing Prabhupada from the outside in a physical form, right? Just like here, we're hearing Prabhupada, his teachings in a physical form. So there is a physical spiritual master. There's also the internal spiritual master, the Super Soul, or the Christians, they call him the Holy Spirit, or the conscience, you can say. That is also Krishna Paramatma, Super Soul, Antaryami, many different names. He's also guiding us. But sometimes it is mixed with our ego, right? Sometimes we think, oh, this is my heart is telling me, or we're being misguided by false ego. So the spiritual master is the external manifestation of the Super Soul, who comes to confirm our intuitive feelings like that. So, there's a huge difference. The spiritual master revives your relationship with Krishna in the heart. The drugs will cover it, right? Because the drugs also, they boost the false ego. People who take LSD, right, they have this experience, cosmic consciousness, and they become very intoxicated with themselves, like that. They think, I'm God, I'm everything, right? All these kind of experiences. Right. And they also tend to be isolated from the rest. And many people who take drugs, they feel themselves isolated from the society. It's very difficult to communicate with people who not necessarily are taking the drugs. So,
So does this mean that drugs can bring a spiritual realization?
Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya, Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami, Iti Namine Namaha, Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya, Bhutale, Shri Advaita
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Because many spiritualists nowadays, New Age spiritualists like Koi Fresco, Dakota Wind, I don't know if you've heard of these personalities, but they're on YouTube and they give people some advice about meditation and yoga and spirituality.
Yeah, Dakota, he messaged me. Yes,
Oh, okay.
He wants to meet me. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Well, anyway, they talk about how drugs can actually be spiritual, or at least even if not spiritual, they can give you a head start in spiritual realization. And also, I know that in the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, obviously a lot of hippies joined, and they were obviously involved in drug usage, and many devotees nowadays, before they become devotees, also they're involved with drugs, and that they would say that opens their minds to Krishna consciousness or something to that same degree. So, what about that? What can drugs bring about spiritual realization?
So I would like to come back to the conversation, Prabhupada's conversation, because there's a little portion there. So
Well, the subjective experience is, while in the state of intoxication of LSD, I'm also realizing that LSD is a material pill, and that it does not really matter.
So that is risky. That is risky.
Yeah, no, so if LSD is a material attachment, which it is, I think, then is not the sound, the shabda, also a material attachment?
No. Shabda is spiritual. Originally, just like in Bible there is, let there be creation. This sound, this spiritual sound, creation was not there. This sound produced the creation. Therefore, sound is originally spiritual. And through the sound from sound sky develops, from sky air develops, from the earth fire develops, fire, water develops, from water land develops.
So here is precisely the point Ginsberg is asking. By the way, he admits that LSD is a material attachment, which is very nice.
Gets convinced immediately.
Yeah. So he says that he gives this kind of a logical challenge to Srila Prabhupada. He says that if the drugs are a material thing, isn't Hare Krishna also a material thing? You become attached to Hare Krishna chanting. What is the difference? Okay, LSD is a drug, but one is material, the other might be also material. Ultimately, you chant Hare Krishna with your material mouth, and it's also, you can say, a material sound. You can see it like that as a material sound. If you're not a devotee, then you don't see the difference. They're chanting Hare Krishna, I can chant Coca-Cola. Right, they see it like that. People say like that. So, what is the argument? And Srila Prabhupada says, no, Shabda is spiritual, and he quotes the Bible. He says that
in the beginning was the Word.
In the beginning there was the Word. So the Word was before the creation. Creation refers to the material world. Material world is subjected to past, present, and future. But the sound was there even before. And that corresponds. Prabhupada also gave a nice lecture in France on the Bible, where he explains this. He says that in the Vedas, there's the sound Om. Om is the first original sound from which everything emanated. And that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Om is Krishna. I am Om amongst the vibrations, Krishna says. So that's one argument. But we can also, I thought of another answer to this question, is that the Shabda, the spiritual sound, contains instruction. When you take an LSD or some drug, you might have some hallucinations, but you don't get a clear instruction, right? You just have an impression, and you're not exactly clear on what it means. So you have just many people who have these drug experiences. They are narrating their experiences, what they have seen, how they have felt, but these are just impressions. There is no instruction on how they should go on, how they should progress further on, and what it means. So, when they speak to people who do not have this experience, it is not easy to understand them, and sometimes people think that these people are crazy. So, and it is also frustrating, people who have these experiences, because undoubtedly these substances, LSD and whatever, these hallucinogenic drugs, they bring experiences that are overwhelming, right? They're very special or very how would you say?
Well, they're outside of everyone's normal experience, so it's very difficult to express or for the mind to comprehend. So yeah, overwhelming is a good word.
Yeah, it's something special. It's not like getting drunk.
Unique.
Some unique experiences, and people are obviously very much inspired by such overwhelming experiences. You know, people, they see the universe and they see the interconnected of the nature, and they see some strange beings talking to them and whatever. You can just go on YouTube and you see thousands and thousands of videos, people retelling their hallucinogenic experiences. So we don't deny that the drugs, they have this kind of potential that they can bring some very unique experiences, but we have to come also to some reasoning. Simply having experiences, okay, that's very nice, but we should come to some plan of how to act on those experiences, right? If someone has, then he should think, okay, how do I act upon this? Because if you do not think about it, then the only thing that remains for you is to take the drug again. And in this way, you become just another addict to the drug experience. And, why should people listen to you? So that is another difference, that the spiritual sound, even the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, right? It's not that we just chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We also hear from the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, like that. We understand about the nature of this world, the nature of the absolute truth. Who am I? What is this material world? And this is sort of kind of like you can say, I would call it like this, that we bringing, for those people who have these experiences, psychedelic experiences, these scriptures present the vocabulary.
They put the experience in writing.
The vocabulary that people can use to communicate transcendental experiences to those who are not on the transcendental platform. See, and then you come to preaching. It's very similar. We're going through the practice, Krishna conscious practice, which doesn't involve any sort of drug taking. It is way much more simple and more effective on the consciousness. The effect is more lasting, and there are no side effects. We wake up early in the morning, we chant Hare Krishna mantra on the beats, kirtan, we worship Krishna in a deity form. We hear from the spiritual master, we hear from the Vedas. These are all very effective techniques of how to remain in a transcendental state of consciousness throughout your day. And then we're many times challenged to explain or to induce others to also take up this practice. So in one sense, it is also comparable to people who have these drug experiences that try to share these experiences with others, try to wake them up, and so on, so on. So if people read these scriptures, if they read these scriptures and take up the real practice of spiritual life, the proper practice of transcendental mind expanding or mind purifying practice, then they will be able to communicate very effectively the transcendental knowledge to others, and also induce them to take up this practice, which is not degrading. Right? There were these movements in the 60s. Timothy Leary, he was also mentioned by Ginsberg on the conversation with Srila Prabhupada. They were thinking, well, we just give people drugs and they automatically become enlightened, which is, in one sense, it's like a good intention, right? You want to make everyone enlightened, but this is not the way. And the result was horrendous, right? People, they started taking drugs and they degraded more and more, and they became more materialistic, we can see that the result of the hippie movement is that people became more and more sensuous and materialistic, and there was very little change. Overall, the society has not changed so much, not progressed so much in spiritual realization. Whereas we see the effects of Srila Prabhupada's movement, how people and devotees have progressed in spiritual life tremendously. So this is one thing that drugs don't give you. They don't give you any instruction. And, for instruction, there must be the spiritual sound. So this is the difference. And I have also included a portion in my book, The Proof of the Vedas, on this very topic. So Prabhu, you can maybe read. I prepared.
Of course. So Piraji Prabhu compiled some nice things in this Proof of the Vedas book, which you can find online. Do we have it on the expanded list? Okay, no, it's a Patreon Rewards. This is the Patreon Rewards item. So in there it says, although our senses are imperfect, the sense of hearing is better than the others, because through hearing we can acquire knowledge. Srila Prabhupada says, maybe we should get the music on, the reading music. I don't know. So knowledge means not to see but to hear. This is Srila Prabhupada. So knowledge means not to see but to hear. Therefore it is called Shruti, Shushruma. Knowledge has to be received through the ear, not by the eyes. Not by the eyes. This is not recommended. Nobody says, I want to see knowledge. No, I want to hear knowledge. Therefore it is called Shruti, and knowledge is received through the ear, oral reception. Why not with eyes and other senses? That is also very important to know. Suppose you are sleeping, then all your senses are also sleeping, but the ear does not sleep. You have got practical experience. When a man is sleeping and somebody is coming to kill him, so what do you say? You cry, Mr. Such and Such, wake up, there is danger, then he can. Otherwise all the senses are there, but only the ear will help you. The ears are there, hands are there, legs are there, everything is there. Nothing of this limbs of your part of your body will help you. Simply your ear will help you when you are in danger. Therefore, here it is said, Shushruma, we have received knowledge through the ears, not with the eyes. The rascal says, I want to see practically. He cannot see. That is not possible. The modern defect is that they do not hear. The so-called scientists, philosophers, they do not hear. They simply want to see, want to touch, want to smell, want to lick up. That is not knowledge, so they are all failure. They do not hear. But the process is here, as it is said, Shushruma, we have received knowledge by hearing from the authority. That is perfect knowledge. That is perfect knowledge. It's an excerpt from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, lecture. Everyone has tasted salt in his life. If we hear salt, immediately we recall the experience of tasting it. We have become accustomed to relate the word salt to the substance of salt, and we can be licking, seeing, touching, or smelling salt, and thus have an experience of salt. But unless we hear from somebody that it is indeed salt, we cannot communicate our experience of salt to anyone. We might have the experience of salt, but so long we do not hear from a superior authority that the white substance we are tasting is salt, we do not have knowledge of salt. Srila Prabhupada explains, Prabhupada, so what is that experience? Tell me, what is that experience? A priest replies, that God is beyond all our experience. Prabhupada, then what is your experience? You have no experience. If it is beyond your experience, then you have no experience. Priest, personally, of course, but Prabhupada, then you cannot explain. You cannot, because you have no experience. Priest, but if you know what you can't explain, Prabhupada, no, if you can't explain means you do not know. Priest, you don't think an illusion indistinct relationship. Prabhupada, no, not illusion. If you cannot explain, that means you do not know. If you know, you must explain. That is knowing. That is knowledge. Room conversation, end of quote. I can create my own unique word for salt. Someone else can then come along and make up his own word to name salt as well. We can all make up our own words and bark at each other with our own uniquely created languages, on and on, without actually ever understanding what the others say. But that's not knowledge. That is simply animalism. When we speak of words, they only have a meaning when they can be communicated to someone else besides ourselves. Therefore, knowledge can be acquired only through hearing. This is an excerpt from the Proof of the Vedas book, available on Patreon as a reward.
Yes, so this spiritual sound and instruction is coming in disciplic succession. It is not simply that I hear some sound in a dream or on an LSD and then it becomes spiritual. It's coming from disciplic succession, just like our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, whatever he says, it backs up by the statements of the previous spiritual masters in that succession. And these acharyas, these teachers, are deriving their realization from the Vedas. So Narottam Das Thakur, he gave the formula, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. The vibration must be tested by the Gurus, by the Sadhus, and by the Shastra. This is a perfect method how to ascertain whether we're getting the genuine guidance in our spiritual life instead of, falling into some hallucinatory illusion induced by drugs.
Yeah, it's a good point, because people might say that they also hear through their drug experiences, and there's no difference in that way. But if they don't have any way to back up their experiences, any authority, then it means nothing, practically speaking. So it's like you said before, there's a nice point that this gives you the knowledge by which you can communicate a transcendental experience. You must actually have some knowledge, otherwise it can come off as a crazy speculation.
Yeah, then anyone can be an authority. If you have some hallucination, some message that says that whatever, then I also have. And then who's going to decide how we're going to... This actually creates conflicts. If everyone thinks that my truth is the only one, that is the cause of fanaticism. So if we accept one authority, just like we present the Vedas, perfect authority, which is, passed down, the message is passed down through this disciplic succession of realized masters, then that will solve all the confusions because we find a common ground. But you cannot come to an absolute truth just on your own experience. That's nonsense. That very method is nonsensical.
Right, and it stays relative. It's always on a relative platform if it's from your experience. I mean, we're talking about an exaggerated example because we're talking about the drugs and someone's experience through the drugs. But actually, this comes down to the basic principle that everyone has their own truth nowadays. Of course, there's this philosophy, matapat, tatapat, which is propagated by these same people who say that drugs can be spiritual. So, I mean, everyone says that, I can find my own truth. It's an internal process, whatever it may be. But if there's no authority, then who's going to decide whose the truth is? My truth might conflict with your truth, so then there's no meaning to truth at all. So yeah, this Guru, Sadhu and Sastra is strictly important for understanding what actually is the absolute truth.
To sum it up, stay high forever. Chant Hare Krishna. No need of taking any drugs. The best drug is to chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah, never come down. The high is eternal. So I'd like to thank our frequent listeners of the podcast. Those who are watching regularly every Monday we release this podcast. So some people I'd specifically like to mention. Gabriel Herrera. Thank you very much for your consistent positive feedback. And you're watching every podcast. And also, upon your request, Prabhu, we're adding some extra Prabhupada Vani, some Prabhupada's vibrations into the podcast for the pleasure of the devotees.
I was thinking about this before. The only problem is that maybe some new people who are listening, they might not catch the accent of Prabhupada. So if you are listening, please let us know in the comments if you were able to pick up the recording we're playing with Allen Ginsberg, if you're able to understand. If not, please drop me a message. I'll send you the transcript.
Also, what I think I'll start doing possibly is putting the actual raw audio into the podcast, because we're playing it off of a speaker and then recording that sound. So it might not be so high quality. I don't know. Let's check afterwards. So thank you very much also to Tessa Ang, who's recently started watching the podcast. She's giving some nice feedback. We very much appreciate anyone's feedback on the podcast. If you have any suggestions, questions, challenges for what you hear here on the Bliss podcast, please put your comments in the YouTube comment section down below, or send us a message on Facebook. We're always open to try and expand the bliss in whatever way. Dear Nitya Prabhu is really on fire with the comments and the suggestions and the feedback. And very much appreciate. I saw in the, I think it was in the Love and Compassion podcast, you took the excerpt of our first kirtan that we did, and you looped it to make a nice 15 or so minutes kirtan, which everyone can find on YouTube. I think it's called Love and Compassion Chants. I can put the link down in the description of this podcast. So thank you, Nitya Prabhu. That was very nice. We appreciate your listening and your appreciation of the kirtans. Back to Cody and back to Robin. Thank you very much, dear Prabhus, for staying in tune with the podcast and giving your comments and your support. Very much appreciated. And also, dear Peter Krishna, also for appreciating the kirtan. We're going to be bringing these kirtans into all the subsequent Bliss podcasts. So thank you very much, everyone, for consistently listening, and please continue to give your feedback. Anything else you'd like to add, Prabhu?
Or you can send us your kirtan.
Okay, cool. We can have a little kirtan compilation of all the Bliss fans. All right, cool. So I think that just about does it for this 15th episode of the Bliss podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Once again, you can keep in contact with us through any of our social medias, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can give us donations on GoFundMe and Patreon, anything to support the preaching efforts of the Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. Everything is very much appreciated.
Expand the bliss.
Jai, Haribol. Okay, I think there's some outro music, and then we'll see you on the 16th episode of Expand the Bliss podcast. Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh, that's extreme. I think it needs to be a little blast that music.